I went through 7 months of boot camp, and in the end of the 7 months, I found myself in Hebron. This is the only city that have a settlement in the middle of the city. So getting into the Hebron, one of the first things that I had to do was protect a Jewish holiday. And my job is to put on curfew 180,000 Palestinians. So settlers throughout the West Bank and Israel, Jewish settlers, could come into Hebron and celebrate. So there's thousands and thousands of Israelis and Jewish settlers from across the West Bank coming to celebrate. And the only way to keep them protected is to make sure that no Palestinian is leaving his home.
Efrati's testimony regarding the city of Hebron serves as a damning critique of the dual legal system. He highlights a stark logistical reality where your rights are determined not by your actions, but by your ethnicity. When he describes his inability to stop a settler from attacking a Palestinian, not because of lack of physical power, but because of a legal hierarchy, he exposes the occupation not as a defense of necessity, but as a rigid caste system. This point challenges the viewer to look past the security rhetoric and see the administrative machinery of inequality.
So literally one of my first tasks was to roam the streets and make sure Palestinians understand they're going into their home and they cannot leave until a second notice, until the next time we're coming in. And the first time was like a movie. You know, we birthed into the city with our guns in our hands and our uniform and vest with grenades and 6 packs of ammunition. And we're just screaming curfew. And you see the chaos. You see the people just running from place to place, closing down their shops, running home, because wherever you are when the curfew starts, this is where you're stuck, and you cannot go anywhere else. So you better be at home when we're starting to count the curfew. Now, the official orders to anyone who breaks curfew is shoot to kill. I never did that. I never met anyone who shoot to kill in this process of a curfew, but that was the orders, and they knew it pretty well. They knew what they need to do. This feeling of power at once came as a big confusion to me. I think I wasn't clear if I'm enjoying the power of controlling all of these people, or if I don't understand why kids look at me frightened. Why are they running away when I'm walking into the street? Before my service, I work as an educator. I love kids. So I think I was very confused on why a kid will find me scary.
The most striking element of this interview is the moral authority of the internal witness. Eran Efrati does not speak from a position of academic theory, but from the visceral reality of a man who held the rifle. By juxtaposing his past as an educator who loves children with his role as a soldier who terrifies them, the narrative effectively strips away the heroic veneer often associated with military service. The critique here is clear. The psychological toll of occupation isn't just borne by the oppressed, but it fundamentally fractures the identity of the oppressor.
And I really couldn't understand that. And I think in a very rapid pace, I realized that my job is actually to maintain an apartheid system. Very early on, I understood that the rights that the Jewish settlers have are not the rights that the Palestinians have. I understood that I cannot touch a Jewish settler if he is attacking a Palestinian. The best I can do is call a local police department to come handle it, like I would do at home in Jerusalem. So these Jewish settlers that live in Hebron are living under the same rights that I live in Jerusalem, but the Palestinian next to them, next house over, next building over, sometimes next apartment over, lives under my rule, my military rule. And I can do whatever I want with him. I can take his home as a temporary base for a few hours to a few days to a few weeks. I can decide that I'm arresting the people of the house and tying them up to the fence of my base. If we will get an order to demolish their home or just lock their front door and don't let them out into the street their house is on, a street that only Jewish settlers can walk on and Palestinian cannot. So they have to walk through windows to yards, into the other side, into the Kasbah of Hebron. I think realizing all of that in a very, very early stage in my service helped me understood that someone was lying to me along the way. I didn't feel like I'm protecting anyone. I didn't feel like I'm helping anyone feeling more safe. I felt like I'm terrorizing people. I feel like for the first time in my life, the boundaries between good and bad that I learned as a kid, and obviously I learned that I'm on the good side, was broken. I felt like I am the terrorist. And my job was literally to scare people so they cannot think about acting against the Israeli settlers or the Israeli military. That was actually our defined mission, to make sure that to instill fear in the hearts of Palestinians in Hebron. And that's exactly what we did.
One of the most provocative points in the commentary is Efrati's realization that his mission was not protection, but intimidation. He critiques the foundational logic of the IDF's presence in Hebron by revealing that the goal is the systematic installation of fear to ensure compliance. This reframes the conflict entirely. It suggests that peace cannot be achieved through such a system because the system itself requires a state of perpetual terror to function. It is a critique of a military strategy that views the civilian population as a target for psychological warfare.
Why did you speak up, and why did you do what you did knowing that you would suffer such repercussions and potentially be banned from returning back to your country?
Well, growing up in Israel, like I said, I believe that I was the good guy. I mean, the story that all of us are being told all around the world is that the very clear difference between good and bad people are there. You learn about the Holocaust growing up. I saw my grandma screaming in the middle of the nights, memories from Auschwitz in our mind, memories to our family. I knew that I am going to be a good human being. You know, in the age of 15, 16, I began being almost obsessed with trying to understand the Nazi side in the Holocaust. Not only to hear the stories of the victims, of the Jewish victims and any other victims from the Holocaust, but to try to understand how can a Nazi soldiers get up in the morning, give his kids a kiss, his wife a hug, and go out to the camps and do his job. I just couldn't understand that. And when I got into the occupied territories, for the first time I understood how can there be a contradiction inside yourself. As a human being, you could do your job and be a one person at home, be a loving, caring boyfriend or a son or a brother, and in the same time hold people under a regime so oppressed that people are dying not from only your bullets, but the amount of calories being entered into their territory, like in Gaza, from depression or sickness. This realization during my time as a soldier of me on the right side of history gave me this urge that something have to be done, something have to be spoken. Understanding that nothing is really changing from inside, that you have to step outside and start talking with the world about what's going on. And that's the only way you can live in a place, not only for Palestinians, but for me as well. You know, I don't want to live in an ethnocracy. I don't want to live in an only Jewish state that values privileged Jewish life on every other life. This urges me to understand that I want my kids to grow up in a place when they don't have to oppress anyone, they don't have to be soldiers.
The interview concludes with a powerful, albeit controversial, connection to Efrati's family history and the Holocaust. He uses his grandmother's experience in Auschwitz not to claim victimhood, but to demand a higher ethical standard. This is a profound critique of how historical trauma can be used. He argues that the memory of past suffering should be a catalyst for universal empathy, rather than a justification for current oppression. His final motivation, the desire for his children to grow up without being either the victim or the victimizer, shifts the critique from a political grievance to a humanistic necessity for survival.